that they may have. David was unable to meet the last meeting, but he did send a bio out. I'd just like to open up the floor and see if anybody has any questions for the candidates. David, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure we did a mic check.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So we have several people on Zoom. Please feel free to ask any questions. We're leaving this time open.
okay, so for those of you that didn't have an opportunity to hear me speak at the last meeting, I want to reiterate why I got involved and why I'm interested in running for the board. It was back in November I came to visit my mom, and I became aware of the budget meeting that was coming up. Unfortunately, I was not on the email communications for Town Square. I didn't even know about Town Square. And part of that was because they had me listed in the system as a tenant and not as an owner. And in reviewing the budget, I had a lot of questions about budget versus actual, looking at variances. And I learned from Castle Management that, that there were other questions, and they then decided to have a budget workshop. David Bowie and I met with Castle Management. We went over our specific concerns for the budget, and they decided to push the meeting to December. So during the budget workshop, after we reviewed the budget, they went through and made modifications to the budget. I then took a look at the numbers, and it looked like there was a 30% increase. I tried to ask questions as to why. I couldn't get any real concrete or, I'd say, efficient answers to why the budget was changing, where those numbers came from. I did figure out that it was due to the Castle Management expenses. It was also due to increased insurance costs, and then our structural integrity reserve study. So I started digging into the details on the structural integrity reserve study to find out whether or not, what actually went into that study. And I learned that there were workshops that took place about the roof. But I was not clear as to whether or not there were any detailed workshops on understanding the structural integrity reserve study. So if you take a look at that study, it says that in order to properly fund our reserves, we should have a special assessment of $1.2 million, which is equivalent to about $5,700 per unit. And that's to cover what was intended in the capital reserves. So from my perspective, I think we could be doing a better job in answering and responding to questions and concerns in a timely fashion, and enlisting support from members in the association to provide additional support and maybe some ideas on creativity. I also think that we need to get together and provide a roadmap on priority items, right? What are those items? Why do we need to fix those items? How much is it going to cost us to fix those items? We need to review all of the financial records and identify opportunities for improvements. And the reason we need to do that is, as we were going through the budget, there were some very rudimentary mathematical errors in the budget. We were short $62,000 in what was represented in our 2024 budget. We were under $6,200 in our represented 2025 budget. There's ongoing mistakes. When I asked Nicole Leon what happened, responsible for reviewing that budget, she said that was on her. I mean, all you have to do is pump the numbers into an Excel spreadsheet and do cross checks. That's basic fundamental reviews of budget. That's basic management responsibility. Errors do occur, but we definitely need to have another set of eyes on those. And I think that with the amount of money that we're paying Castle Management, those types of errors shouldn't happen. They have a large support team to be able to ensure those kinds of mistakes don't happen. I have not completely looked at the finances. David, I know, I don't want to speak for him, but I know he's starting to take a look at that. I actually took a look at the 2025 budget. I ran through those numbers. There's again some mistakes in the budget, whether or not they're impactful or not. I have not come to that conclusion yet. When I do, I will share that information that I learned. I asked to get access to many of these documents from Castle Management. They would not give me access to the official documents. I actually had to hire a lawyer and submit paperwork. And I have the emails if anybody's interested in looking back at the communications where they denied access until I actually got a lawyer involved. I believe we need to be holding monthly informational meetings for folks that want to understand the details of what's going on within the association where the monies are being spent. And we need to provide the community an opportunity to provide feedback. I know that we have Town Square. I know that we're allowed to input issues and questions into Town Square, but I also know that we have no measurement tool or reporting tool back to folks to know whether or not a problem has been reported previously. And we don't use it as a report card to determine the quality of our suppliers. And I would suggest that we take a look at those, using those tools to make sure that we're measuring the quality of our providers. I've already mentioned the servers and capital improvements. I think we need to take another look at that study and see if there's any opportunities for reducing the expenses or confirming the useful life of the items that are on that study. At a minimum, the association needs to understand how those numbers were derived and why they are important for us to invest back into the property. I don't think there's anybody that would argue that we shouldn't maintain the structure of our property and make sure that we're protecting our investments. However, I do think that our association members are owed communications as to why the decisions are being made and where the money is being spent. I touched on internet and cable. There are some members of the association that are questioning whether or not we should be bundling that into our monthly assessments, or should we allow folks to go out on their own? I would like to be able to get that input from the community. Maybe we should put a survey up. Maybe we should find out how many people want independent providers and how many don't. Maybe we should work with our neighbors to figure out whether or not we can capitalize on a bigger discount because we're all under similar contracts. And the contract is coming up at the end of the year. I've asked questions as to what we're doing to renegotiate that. Are we looking at other suppliers? Are we looking at faster speeds? What are we doing in that area? Still haven't gotten an answer from anybody on that.
Can we go back to the work for a moment?
Sure.
The question I had was, even though in the email or the communication that Nicola for the board made, they said that there was no contract signed for a new roof. If no contract was signed, they canceled the maintenance contract that's paying quality roofing.
Right, we are no longer maintaining the roof.
So there's nothing in place.
That's correct.
They don't give us any answer.
That's correct.
So
that was one of the questions, Ray, that I asked during the budget review meeting, that we had $30,000 in the budget previously for roof repairs and maintenance, and why did we not? I didn't get an answer to that question because apparently it wasn't on the agenda.
Well, this is the big problem that I see, and that I want residents to know, that this board and Castle Management are not transparent. They're not transparent, and they're not interested in answering the residents' questions. Emails, phone calls.
I did ask those questions, and they told me they don't have the answers yet. Okay, they have not made any decisions. They're looking and researching things. I've asked for informational meetings. I've asked for an explanation as to why we need a new roof when our 50-year, and Jamie brought this up in our budget meeting, we have a 50-year inspection report and insurance mitigation report that indicates that we have 5 years left remaining on that roof. We have a maintenance contract with our roofing supplier that says that We don't need a new roof so long as we maintain it. We have information from new roofing contractors that say that if we get a new roof and we invest that money, then in 2 years, we'll have to go back to $30,000 a year maintenance contract.
Correct.
So I don't have answers to any of those questions. I did include those documents in my official request for documents. Nicola does have that stack of the open bids for me. And she does have any email, I asked for any email communications with banks on loans. And I did talk to Frank about that. Frank did say that they are investigating different ways of funding it. However, they have not come to any decision funding it yet. But again, the point I'm making here is that there's a lot of work that needs to go in, and they are, absent of getting any information, there are bids up there. We need to dig into that. I did, research from the industry perspective on nuclear studies, on moisture studies, on different methods of replacing it, on flat roofs. I've talked to 4 different contractors on what the options are there. We need to dig into that, and we need to hold an informational meeting. We need to record the meeting so that, which should have hit the record button. We need to record that meeting so that folks that are not able to attend can go back and either read the transcript from the recording, or they can watch it at their home, so that we can get the information out to folks. We need to get the estimates for replacing those things, should it be $5,700, right, out to folks so they can start budgeting it. We need to, on our monthly financial reports, we need to continue to drive home those points. We need to make sure that our community is prepared to continue to maintain and support the property.
So one of the big questions I have also is if they didn't sign a roof contract, which they're telling us they didn't, but that doesn't mean a whole lot to me personally. There was nothing in the budget for roof maintenance, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
So then the roof is just going without anything.
That's right.
So that's really not a very good idea either. So this, in my opinion, is just more ineptness of this board and the lack of managing a management company.
Okay, so moving on, I think I've already said this numerous times, but I'll say it again. Going into replacing a roof is not as simple as it appears on the front. There's 5 buildings plus the header building that need to be replaced. When you replace the roof, you have to remove all of the air conditioning units and put new stanchions on those air conditioning units. Many of our air conditioning units are more than 15 years old. It's not just, may not survive it. And when you peel back the roof, you could have concrete spalling on that roof. You need to be able to be prepared financially to be able to replace any concrete issues, right? That isn't going to say that if we don't peel back the roof, that those issues aren't still there, right? And if you keep resurfacing it, those questions have to be answered by the specialists that do roofing. You need to really dig into it and understand the impact of all those things.
I agree with you, and it also has to be communicated to the residents.
Right.
So that they know.
I agree. I already talked about shopping for internet and cable. I talked about holding suppliers, including their managers and contracts, accountable for performing duties and described. If they don't, let's replace them. Let's manage it like a business. If people aren't doing the jobs and they're not delivering against their contracts and they're not doing quality work, we need to get rid of them and replace them. And there's numerous examples of those situations. And one method that I had suggested that we do to monitor those, specifically the laundry, is not have residents call the suppliers directly with issues, find a way to manage and funnel those through the management company so that we can put pressure on them and track it. And I mean, it's a great tool. Town Square is a great tool. Why aren't we using it? Why aren't we providing the board? Or maybe we are providing the board monthly reports and we're just not aware of it. But that was one suggestion that I had to castle management, and it goes on, the list goes on and on, but I don't want to belabor what isn't done. I want to focus on what I think can be done to improve upon where we are today.
Well, I think it's important that we address what's not being done and then what we can do to improve on it. So you just brought up the laundry, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So they negotiated this laundry company and now they don't take responsibility for who they chose.
Right.
So if there's issues, don't go to the office, don't go to the manager, don't go to the board. You got to call the wash company.
Right.
What are we paying the management for?
Hardly.
And she's up there 5 days a week. What's she doing? And that shouldn't really be our responsibility as residents. That should be the management's responsibility, or the board, or both. And neither one take on that responsibility.
Ray, I've taken up 20 minutes. I just want to go through a couple more points. And thank you for that input. And I'm sure there'll be more comments to come on that. Just so everybody's aware, as we are going through these issues and identifying concerns, I am capturing them in a document, discussing them with the candidates on the slate, and categorizing them by finance problems, finance improvements, capital issues, capital improvement approach, property maintenance improvements, communications improvements. It is basically a 7-page document that is a collection of things that I've heard from residents that they'd like to see changed or improved upon. It's large, it needs to be focused, and Rome wasn't built in a day, at least. But you can't do it if you don't capture it. You can't do it if you don't prioritize it. You can't do it if you don't communicate about it. And I think that my promise to do all of these things will help get us continuous improvement in the direction of making sure we have a property that we're proud to live in. I also brought up in previous meetings and in my official document request the need to understand where we stand with overdue maintenance fees. And for those of you that were at the last meeting, I did ask why we're at $98,000 in overdue fees, and Nicola assured me that those would go down, that most of those were from the December assessment. And I did get a copy of the accounts receivable as of the end of January, I believe. It's dated February 17th. So for those of you that have asked, we have $43,894 in accounts receivable. 14,000 of those accounts are based on the special assessments.
14,000 of the 43,000
is based on the special assessments, right?
So if that was to go down to number 14,
Well, no, we have 43,800 is monthly assessments that are in arrearage. And $14,000 is due to the December assessments. And one of the reasons I asked this question is, what is the financial capabilities of folks to take on structural integrity reserves? What are we going to do if we go forward with the decision to make these big investments and not look at alternative funding? Are we going to be incurring additional legal fees to go after those that are behind? So that's really my motivation to ask these questions, so that they can be considered when making future decisions. And when you look at this report, there are a couple of monthly assessments that jump out at you. There's probably, I want to say, maybe 25 different units that are in arrear, and there are 4 or 5 that jump out. So if you look at the statistics, those things need to go into what you're going to face when you start adding additional assessments on. I was asked by a couple of folks in emails, Maureen, what is your take on special assessments? Are you willing to special assess folks if needed? And the answer is yes, absolutely. But special assessments should only be under circumstances that aren't planned and unbudgeted, right? We have that situation now with the Structural Integrity Reserve Study. We need to dig into that. We need to make sure that we are not prematurely overtaxing our residents, right? We need to completely understand that. And it's a budgetary issue that people are just gonna, we're gonna have to face. But we can't just go applying it without really understanding the consequences of applying those assessments and having a decision as to what we're gonna do when they go delinquent. How are we going to address those things? And there are some folks here that are in receivership, right? The gentleman just passed away, he's in arrearage, right? So we're going to run into a situation where we have to file liens on properties so that when they close, we can recapture that. So that was my point in aggressively pursuing overdue maintenance fees and at least understanding them. And then the last topic that I wanted to make, there were 2 other points from an email Middle River Club has been a bone of contention. It's been half a dozen employees back in